I'm Joan Hatlestad. I've been a member of Peace Church. Actually, I was born in Peace Church. My grandfather became a member in the early 1900s, and there's a great story about that. His first wife was getting ill, and I'm guessing between 1904 and 1906, and his wife was ill with cancer. And John Beerhalter Sr. was Roman Catholic, but it was and I cannot remember the minister's name here in those days, but he befriended John Beerhalter Sr. and he visited him all the time, and he was there for him. And so after his wife died, a year or two later, he said, "I'm not returning to the Roman Catholic Church," and this because it was this minister who was there for me, and I'm going to go to his church. And so that was probably the same time, about 1907 or even earlier. And he was brewmaster at Fitger's Brewery at the time, and didn't live too far away from both the church and the brewery, for that matter. So my father was Erwin Beerhalter, and he was the middle child. And he worked also for Fitger's, although he didn't want to. But without going into that in detail, I just thought of another fun thing about my grandfather before I go on to my father quickly, is that when he joined Peace Church, there's St. Paul's E&R on 10th Avenue East and 3rd Street. There's these huge, humongous steps that many of you have seen in the books. And you had to climb them. There's no other way every Sunday to go to church. And he would do that in his later years, but he sat in the same pew. It was the back row on the left for 40 years. Dad, or Irv, had a sister, and everybody knows her as well, Dorothy Beerhalter, who is a school teacher in Duluth for almost 50 years, never married, and was always a part of our family. And Marcel was married my dad in 1941, and then soon after she became a member of the church, not in the Covenant Church in the West End that she grew up in. There's three of us: Barbara, who is no longer with us, and Susie, who lives in Minneapolis with her husband, and I'm the middle child. And I think that the key that I remember about just growing up in Peace Church is I remember it from the early days at the old church, when it was so small. We had curtains between Sunday school classes, and Trudy Schwert was everything. It was just everything in the church, and she and Mom and Dad and her husband became very, very good friends. We were all baptized here by Reverend Walter Rashi, in the 40s and 50s. And we were really close to Naomi and Walter and their children. So their children babysat us, and we babysat their children, and all the way down the line. And when Susie is 5 years younger than I am, and Barbie and I are 11 months apart, and we went to California to visit my grandmother's sister, by train. And Walter Rashi and his wife, Naomi, took care of Susie for a whole month. And it was just that close of a family situation.
Do you remember when this church was built?
I sure do. 1959-60, it was built. There was a big campaign. Donald Schmidt was the minister, and Donald Schmidt was also my confirmation teacher. And we had to go to church every Sunday as confirmands, and I loved it. We had to do a synopsis of every sermon on every Sunday, and then share something about it with Pastor Donald Schmidt. His kids were about our age, so we got to know them. I never admitted to my peers that I really liked going to confirmation, but it was memorable because he was very good at it. And I think another key thing is just the closeness of the church was somewhat small. I think Lyndon
Linda and Dick were just here recently to do the same thing I'm doing with you now. And we were there every Sunday with our kids, no matter what, whether they were crying on the way to church or not. And there's about at least 3 years between our kids and their kids. But because the Sunday schools were so small in those days, they just became great friends. And also with the Ashbachs, we were really close to them at that time and did a lot with them. As a matter of fact, Mike and Dick ran the Buildings and Grounds, is what we called it in those days, committee for about 6 or 7 years. And there's stories about that as well. So.
Do you remember anything about sauerkraut dinners?
Oh, sure.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, in the old church, when you're young, you maybe could go outside and play, but the smell was unbelievable. They made it so well that I could even enjoy sauerkraut. It wasn't my favorite. But they had other kinds of dinners there too, and everybody was like family because it was so small. But they would also, for every key occasion that a church would have, they decorated the small basement area, and it was just unbelievable all the fun we used to have together. Just no way you could explain it. And Trudy was everything. I mean, she was my mentor.
So what has it meant to you to be part of Peace Church?
Well, I don't know if you're going to ask this later, but I had some health issues in the 80s, chronic fatigue as they called it then, and still do, I guess. And so I quit my job to stay at home with the kids, the girls, and it was, as you well know, as parents and working at the same time and raising families, it can be quite a stretch, especially if you're active people in whatever you're doing. And so I ended up spending 20 hours a week here at Peace Church when Greg had already gone, but John Pegg was here, and I would volunteer and everything. So when I went through the list of how I participated in Peace Church, I've been on every committee except 2, the council and the food and fellowship. Even though I participated with bringing food, I just wasn't. But this is really important to me in my roots, is that I went to UMD 1 year. I didn't know what my major was going to be, but I knew deep within it was always going to be Christian education. So I transferred to Elmhurst College, which is a UCC-related school outside of Chicago, a suburb, in my sophomore year. And Peace Church gave me a scholarship of $250 a year for the 3 years I was still there. And it meant a lot to me. So it was just natural for me to come back and participate in Christian education. So Jan Ashbach and I did it all. Did a lot when there were few people around, and other people did too, but we just became close as friends as well with the children and Dick and Mike. But it was, what did we call it? Summer camp. I knew there's another word for it, but we do all of that, planning and involvement, and lead that. Vacation Bible School, excuse me. And then Christian ed things, I taught Sunday school, wherever I was needed. Another key area that I liked was shared ministry. I don't believe I started it, but I think Greg Flint asked me to do something way back when, and it just expanded to what you just had last Sunday, where we had tables all over and people talking about what we do and how we do it and what a commitment means, or how little you need to do, but just join and have a good time as well as meeting people. And so that just has continued for 30 years since I did it or more. And so that means a lot to me. And then stewardship. I was on a stewardship committee, you name it, I did it.
John, didn't you work on the structure of the church? When John Pegg was here, actually setting up these committees and the different boards?
Thank you. Yes, exactly. What we called that was strategic planning. And Kathy had asked me to do that, or maybe but before Kathy at Jen Pegg. And so we had a model I don't know if it was just simply UCC model or not, United Church of Christ, but it was called the 12 Steps to an Effective Church. And we did this for 2 years, and we led different groups to make a plan. And out of the plan came, which is really the roots of why I love Peace Church. It isn't motto, what word do we use? It's
Mission, vision.
yeah, mission, vision, but it was love grows here. Love grows here. And I think throughout the years, I have grown to know what that means at all different levels. I did adult forums, I talked about inclusive language and how difficult that was for so many people in this church, and how we had forums with John Pegg's wife. I'm blocking on her name right now. Lynn, thank you. And I did a lot of adult forums for different things. I now have been a studier of a course in miracles, which I really love, and it's just absolutely sustained me and deepened my faith to an nth degree. I cannot name it. And would love to come back and share some of that with Peace Church. And we did have a tough time at Peace Church after Greg Flint, a beloved pastor and a very people pastor, and we had change in leadership. We had several interim women, Lynn Kay, and I'm blacking on the other gal's name. And then there was differences in personalities then that time thing. But we decided that I was strong on it. I said, I'm not going to take the fact that the reason people might be considering leaving Peace Church is because of this or this. We need to do a visitation of all of these people who have expressed, and we made a list from everybody who we knew had some little disgruntlement, and we went out and visited each one of them. And we found out, which is what I anticipated, was they were all different reasons. They weren't one reason or one person. This is where I am in my own spiritual growth and development. And so, as a matter of fact, as a result of that, many people came back and gave it another go. Some people left, and we knew their reasons, and it was just fine. But it just made me feel good that worked as well as it did. So, and I was also on the search committee for Kathy, and she brings that up every time she introduces me to somebody. And Joan was on the search committee. So we know that was 30 or 31 years ago now. And I was there with Trudy and Dick Eschbach, not Dick Eschbach, but Dick Gazy and many others. I could list them off right now if you wanted me to. I was so excited to think about all these things. I just want to find a note here. Greg Flint married us and baptized our children. And because we were close to Sue and Greg, too, because we were the same age as everybody at that time, he knew how long we had dated, because Mike and I met in high school. And he was not into girls, even as a senior. So I asked him to be an escort for me at some event at East High School, and he went in January. But then he didn't invite me to the prom. So I went with another younger guy that I knew, but just nice, had a good time. But Michael went to the cabin with 5 guys, and he had a good time, probably playing poker. It was after that at UMD we really started dating again, our first year, and I left him to go. I had to get out of Dodge. And so it was 12 years later we married. So Greg always pointed that out, and you dated a long, long, long time, that kind of thing. But we had lots of fun with them as well. But I was confirmed in 1958, so I haven't counted how many years that is, but it's over 60 years I've been a member of Peace Church. I think the other piece, I did not leave Peace Church disgruntled. It was a hard decision, but because of my love for the spiritual journey, I wanted to branch out. I did become a spiritual director out of the Carondelet Center in St. Paul. It was part of the Roman Catholic tradition, but they had mentors or teachers of different faiths and social workers and and Christian brothers who were our teachers as well. Many of you might know it by Wisdom Ways now and other names, but so technically I am a spiritual director and did a few things in that area as well.
If you could boil it down to one word, what would you use to describe Peace Church?
My takeaway is God is love, and love grows here, and it is my roots. And I have never forgotten that, which is why I now in my late 70s, and my husband died a year ago, and I move on from my house in the country. This is where I want to be. And I just want to say that one thing that came to mind in thinking about this briefly was that at my confirmation, I looked up my confirmation verse. I don't know what it can be looked up. I know Bill Colts has it in the historical committee. But it was this: I have come to bring life and to bring it more abundantly. And when I heard that as a young person, I said, that isn't what our world thinks is abundant life. It isn't about the money, the home, the right job, that thing. It's about something more meaningful. And I have to explore that. And that was love. So I think that's it in a nutshell.